This canyon wall carries my tune. The only one to hear my song are the coyotes and the wolves. But if I drink enough of this flask, I can hear them sing your song too.
Hello, welcome to Native Giants Podcast. I'm Tate Hieronymus. I am the host of this podcast. I am doing the second episode for the show, and I have none other than Robert Leiterman, or Ranger Robert Leiterman, as he is still called in some circles. Robert, welcome to the show.
Real small circles.
Real small circles.
I'm pretty good. Yes. How come I wasn't your first interview? You did this guy named the Shroud.
With the Les Stroud. I think, is that his name?
Yeah, you did Les. That was pretty cool.
But now I have a doppelganger on. So
yeah. You know, it's funny because I have a picture I took because I had one of his books. So in the cover of the book, he's got a bandana and he's looking kind of stoic. Let me try to get this right. He's got that stoic look. And so I posed holding the book with the same look. And I was being interviewed by Dana and Tim Holleran.
Yeah.
And they go, you know, your mannerism is kind of like him. I go, yeah, people have said that before. I go, just a minute, I'll send you a picture. So I sent them that picture, and they laughed because they saw it. And I know I canceled out the interview with him. I missed that. I had so much stuff going on, I'm glad you guys did it. I heard it was a good interview. And yeah, so this I'm pleased to be your second for this program you're working on.
Yeah, it's I didn't do one last month. I've been trying to do videos, release content once a month. Obviously because I'm busy as well, so it's hard to get to that video grind because there's editing. When you don't have somebody helping you with editing and stuff, it's very hard. So, but it's funny because I was showing my parents that interview with Les Stroud that I did, and they were like, "Man, that reminds me so much of Robert Leiterman." I'm like,
it's funny.
I'm telling you. So it's not just Tim and Dana that think the same thing. It's other people.
Yeah, who knows? I've ancestors in Canada. You never know.
I mean, you could be very well related. That'd be crazy to think about. So, I don't think that's going to be the last time we interview Les.
Good.
I know you're going to be on that second time we do it. So that'd be great. So Les will meet his doppelganger, Robert Leiterman.
That'd be funny.
That'd be honestly, that'd be really cool.
Yeah. If we can figure out what he's wearing that day to be able to wear the same thing.
Oh my God.
That'd be funny.
Just have everything on standby, right beside you. So when you see a last minute, that's okay, let's do it.
That'd be funny. Well, again, I thank you for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to just sharing the latest of what we've been working on and stuff.
Yeah.
So what questions do you have for me?
So let's update some people here, Robert.
Sure.
Because I guess back in the day, pre-COVID or during COVID, I started the Bluff Creek Project podcast. That was one of my big contributions to Bluff Creek Project.
Yeah.
So we did that. And we've been doing that for a few years now.
Well, I think so. Actually, there's this book that was published called the Bluff Creek Project, and there's actually a section in here. I'll hold this up so everybody can see it.
Right there.
There it is. Bluff Creek Project podcast. Yeah, and I'm looking at the date here. As of October 20th to 21.
Yep. So it was pretty much right after COVID, maybe a year or less. And so we've been doing that for a while. At first, in the beginning, it was one of the project member, Kip Morrill, who was co-hosting. And then Kip kind of retired from that. And then Robert Leiterman started joining me on as co-host for the project podcast. And it's got to a point where it's like, I kind of got burnt out on it, I guess, in doing it
Yeah.
because it happens when you do things like for a long time. And the original idea for people listening was I really wanted to interview people who are associated with the Bluff Creek Project or have been to the film site or Bluff Creek in general. I'm very pleased to say that we've accomplished that goal and then some. Um, so as far as where that's standing right now, there's a few episodes I haven't had time to get to yet, but there's a couple episodes left to release for the Bluff Creek Project podcast
Hmm.
that we still have. And after that, I think we're kind of just transitioning out of it. Doesn't mean it's going to be completely dead in the water, but just still, everybody, if you're a fan of that podcast, just keep watching for updates from it. So that's all
Yeah.
I have to say. But
It's going to have a new name though, basically the same concept or ideas with new things added. And you can share the new name now.
so yes, we're moving from the Bluff Creek Project channel to my YouTube channel, Tate Hieronymus. The channel, or I guess not the channel, but the podcast is Native Giants Podcast. So we're doing a lot of new stuff. Obviously with podcasting, it's hard to actually get in the field because what I want to do with this in the future is I want us to do video podcast in the field, not like over Zoom.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ideas I have with this. I've been talking to you about behind the scenes, Robert, and I think
Yeah.
you and I kind of share the same ideas and everything. So I think we came up with a thing for this summer in Bluff Creek this July that we're going to be filming camera podcast interviews for Native Giants podcast with Robert as my co-host for a lot of them. So I'm really looking forward to that. And as far as what you think about that, Robert, speak your mind. What do you think?
I think that'd be kind of good. At first, when you said, and we're going to bring this blind with us, so we're going to have a studio, a portable blind studio that we'll put it anywhere and you can operate out of the little studio. At first I thought it was kind of silly. The more I think about it, it's kind of an interesting concept, the portable studio concept. But sometimes, like at Laos camp, you can't escape water no matter what. It's like 270 degrees of water all around you. You have Notice Creek, you have Bluff Creek, and it winds around your own little peninsula section there. So you always have the sound to deal with. But having another tent concept of it, it'll work fine because we've actually did some interviews right there where the Willow Creek tent sing was. And that was the place we picked out because it was farthest, it was flat. It had obstacles in the way to break sound down, but it was one of the very few places you can do that while having to deal with all the water sounds around. But yeah, we did some interviews there as well.
And
Some in the field stuff.
yeah, there's a couple. I can't remember which episodes they were on the Bluff Creek Project podcast, but yeah, there's a couple over there. But what's nice about the tent thing is that if there's wind, it kind of helps with like breaking the wind sound and everything too. So yeah, I mean it's a funny idea. I was like, hey, let's just do that. It's my traveling studio when I'm out on the road, and
Right.
it's a decently controlled environment in there as far as non-controlled environments go. But
Yeah. But I'm afraid you're still going to be breaking wind in there as well. So
a different kind of wind, ladies and gentlemen.
yes.
As long as I don't have anything to eat before the interview, then we'll be good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's that. So that's the update with the Bluff Creek Project podcast. There's a couple more episodes, but it'll be in hiatus for a little bit because I'm kind of just focusing on different things as I move along. So, but as far as like podcasting goes in the book, so Robert, you wrote the Bluff Creek Project book. Was it Road to Discovery? I forget.
Well, let's find out.
Let's find out.
Let me pick up the autographed copy of the. Well, I think your name's in here too, Tate.
Ooh, I'm in the book. Oh,
Well,
look at
yeah, you're a
that.
few of them. But yeah. So what was your question again?
You wrote a book
Yes.
about discovering the film site. Show us all what that is.
Okay, great. Well, the Bluff Creek Project, we'll check here. In 2021, I think that's when we got this book finally published. Stephen did a lot of the editing through it. I decided to get a lot of other contributors, other people in the project to also write little stuff inside, because the initial thing was going to be like this big project for the whole team. But not everybody likes to write. Nobody has time to write. So I took that on myself and decided to go ahead and do it. And I wanted to make it not like a typical research book. Like, oh, here's another book on Bigfoot. Great. People's encounters, the usual stuff. I wanted it a little bit different. I wanted to have some stories in here. And the process of us trying to figure it out, because when you think about how much time was spent looking by our group, it's like Ian and Stephen had started a lot earlier. I'm only in the number third person. I was only there to videotape them looking for the film site. In 2003, it was decided that people didn't know where it was in the Bigfoot Symposium in Willow Creek on Sunday. So I talked to Stephen in 2007, and it was the 40th anniversary, and it was at the Veterans Hall, and that's where I got to officially meet Stephen. And I was like his paparazzi. He was like, "Who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy?" So I was talking back and forth, and after the event, went to a place called Louse Camp. And then once we're at Louse Camp, around the campfire, because Stephen's really good at talking and telling stories around the fire. So, and he's also a night owl. And so, yeah, I know, new news there. So,
No.
so staying up late around the fire, we were talking about it, and that's what he reemphasized again, or actually for the first time for me to even care about it, that the film site had been misplaced. And he talked about the story of 2003 and a few other things. I go, "Oh, that's interesting." But in the back of my mind, I'm going, who cares? It's just a place. Who cares? But it wasn't until that's 2007, and you have 2008 and 2009 and then 2010. And then all of a sudden, we started doing our research in pretty much in 2010. But also in 2007, on the same trip, I was also taken to the areas of the film site and walked through the water along the base of the hillside. And both Bobo and Cliff Brackman mentioned, yeah, these are probably the trees. And it was all overgrown, so you had to walk along the edge in the back. And you're looking for big trees, and there's a few of those, as you know. And I couldn't tell you exactly where it was or which trees we looked at, but that was the first exposure to that. So that was in 2007. So 8, 9, now we're in 2010. Robert's got a big project now. Robert's running around videotaping, interviewing people, and doing research, because somebody gave him a camera and a Gen 3 lens to screw on the end of the camera, and I'm running around filming everything. Because during the expeditions, I thought it was pretty cool to have that access to stuff. But originally, when we were doing the BFR expeditions, the camera stuff was in case we saw something, we were going to document. And we've been doing that for quite a few of the expeditions. But around 2009, I'm thinking, why don't we just film the people? They're a lot more interesting. So we started doing that. So I'd go out and I'd have the camera gear, I would film, and then I would give it back, all the footage and everything back. And silly for me to think that nobody cares. That, oh, great, I have this great footage and maybe they can do something with it. Yeah, thank you very much, delete. Thank you very much. And then the equipment was passed on for each expedition. And so that's a little frustrating. So finally, it was Matt Moneymaker. He goes over, he goes, "Hey, why don't you hang on to that, and then you can film, and then you can do your own editing." And you're looking at a guy who can't even fix his phone. I have to have my kids help me, or my wife help me with my phone. And so it's like, sure, I'll try it. So then I got the bug for editing. So this is about 2009, right? 2000 in the parts of 8 and into 9. So now Robert's running around with a video camera, filming everybody.
This was pre Finding Bigfoot too.
Oh yeah, this is before that. I'm not the only one that was running around doing crazy things like that, but all the footage, I would edit it out, and then I would upload it to the BFREO YouTube channel. And after 100 something videos, you're like, had a whole bunch of stuff up there, and that was kind of a fun thing to do. So why do I say all this? Is because when we got to 2010, I'm looking for more people to interview. And you're familiar with that. I got to get more interviews. Who do I book? I'll call Robert. He's not doing anything. And so you got it. So what I ended up doing is that now that I got the camera, I'm now interviewing. So one of the things I remembered Stephen talking about was the confusion about where the film site was. And so in 2000 and gotta get my years straight. In 2010, I scheduled a meet with Stephen and I got to see the Bigfoot books.
The famous
first time.
Bigfoot books. Yeah.
Bigfoot books. Those who aren't familiar, it's where Stephen Struford used to, that was his place where his business was. And if those you don't know, well, it burned down and he relocated. And so I showed up at the first time in 2010, I want to say September. After I went to the Willow Creek Museum, I filmed all the stuff there and I said, I can use this footage. So I filmed that. Then when I got to Stevens, I parked out front and I can hear the bass going boom, 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 coming from the bookstore. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so we're here. So I got the camera out. It's an RC100. I'm talking on it, going, yeah, here we are. We started a project, and here's Bigfoot books, film. Oh, here, let's go see what's going on. So I'm walking up, filming, and I get to the porch, and there's books everywhere. Then I get to the door. It's wide open. Music's blasting out, and then there's walls of books all over the site, and then their shelves are full, and Steven's got all books everywhere. I'm like, oh my goodness! And you're looking around. And I got the camera. I'm probably doing this now, and then I'm looking around, and there he is. I see that, but in the far back by the kitchen, there's like a computer screen right there, and a head pops up above it. And, oh, there we are. So I go navigating the tunnels, go over there, and I get there, and it's like, "How you doing?" So I put the camera, and in the book I talked about how he was gracious to see me, but at the time he wasn't. It was like, you need to ask people's permission first. And this is, we talked about this, am I here to do the filming and yada. So we were soon back to work. And that's when Stephen gave me the PowerPoint because he had the blog, right? And he had everything on blog. He'd always put up information. It was all organized. So now I'm sitting there at the computer with him filming, and he's going through his blog like an outline, like a PowerPoint presentation.
That's hilarious.
And that's when I learned, I didn't know there were 5 different film sites. I didn't know about this other stuff. It's like I knew about some of the controversies, but it didn't really matter too much to me. But here it is. And I didn't understand that how can all these things get done in 3 days? And how do they get the film developed? How do they get it back to Yakima? Who was there? All these other things. Who did they talk to that day? And so all in this PowerPoint. And then it got to the point where he was talking about pretty much that there was 5 separate locations, that there's more than that, but those are the 5 that a guy named Ian Carton, at the time it was just Ian, the Boy Scout, of what he and Stephen were talking about. So later on in a few days, I was supposed to meet them both back at the film site. So I got all this information. And after that, I went right down to the film site. And I'm all over. I'm snooping around the MK Davis location. I'm walking it because I used to drive down to the bat boxes when the 12 and 13H was open. Used to be able to drive all the way down to what was called the Peter Burns site, which is where the bat boxes were, the highest upstream.
Yeah.
And right off to your right, where the picnic table is now, that Ian and the guy named Tate helped bring up.
So yeah, let's. Real quickly,
I mean, Jamie, not Ian. Jamie.
So yeah, for people who don't know, real quickly, Robert.
Yeah, no problem.
You used to be able to drive all the way down from the 12 and 13, which is one of the main roads that goes from Cedar Camp Road to Louse Camp. There's a little side road off this main parking lot area that goes down. That's the 12 and 13H.
About 12 and a half miles.
Yeah,
2.5 miles down.
You used to be able to drive all the way down to the creek, but now there's a rock slide that happened, and they burned it off. I think it's about a mile hike down to the creek.
It's a total mile hike down to the actual film site, but it's pretty much about a half mile down towards the bottom.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah, which would be the right where you can turn off on the trail, that area where it opens up, where there used to be a crowd there many years ago. That's where the bat boxes are. That's where the Peter Burns site, allegedly location was. So that location.
Yeah, and Jamie had me help him.
Wayne.
Jamie Wayne of the Bluff Creek Project, one of our key guys there. He's like, Tate, do you want to help me bring these boards to help build a bench down to the bottom? So Egyptian style, we dragged them over like washed out hillside and rocks and everything. And you know what I got paid in? I got paid in beer, and that was the best
Of course
payment.
you did.
I think that was
And there
the
was
best payment ever.
two stream crossings.
Yes, it was. It was a nightmare, but it was worth it. It was fun. It was a good experience. Jamie, I had a good time with Jamie doing that. But anyway, continue on with what
Yeah,
you're
it's like,
saying.
but it's like dog years for me. I forgot exactly what I was talking about. Oh yeah, the Peter Burns site.
Peter
That's where you used to
Burnside.
drive down and be able to park. And so I used to drive there and park. There's a fire ring there. It has an old tennis shoe. For everybody, please don't discard the old tennis shoe.
It's
I've been
now
seeing
it's
that tennis shoe, the white tennis shoe that's now got algae, not algae, but moss growing all over it. I first saw that around 2013.
it's historical tennis shoe now.
And somebody tossed it in the bushes. I spent a half hour looking for it, and I found it, and I brought it back to its home, and I set it by there. So that's an artifact. That's what we call artifacts. So film site artifacts, right? And so that just past that, you go farther down, and you hit the second bat box, and then it narrows. We call that the rocky plug, and then it opens up past that, and that's where the MK Davis site location was. And I used to hike that. I guess I first started going down there about 2000 and I want to say 2005 to 2007. I'd walk down there and I'd look for bear tracks in the sand down there, and I would try to cast them with plaster pairs. And I didn't know that was the Peter Burns site, MK Davis site, everything. I was told that the film site was by pretty much where the Peter Burns site was.
Right.
I think Tom Yamaron told me that's where it was, where he remembered. And so I didn't care. It's just a place where I parked my car, and then you go downstream, you collect bear tracks, pour them, and you walk back up, and then you drive out of there. And it was totally different. Well, when I went down there at the time, you couldn't. I'm trying to think if I drove down all the way. No, I didn't. I actually walked up the creek the first time from Louse Camp, where I was parked or camping.
Wait, so you were at Louse Camp, or you were at the first bridge before? Like, because there's two bridges. So when you drive into the 12 and 13H, you go past like the 12, or no, you go past the 12 and 13H on the 12 and 13,
Right. That's what we call the cell site, the cell camp.
and then you go
You
to the
drive
first
past
bridge.
that, and you keep going another 4 miles, and you drive past that, and it goes downhill.
Yep.
And then it crosses the 12 and 13 bridge, crosses Bluff Creek. And then you continue by at 1.1 miles, and it takes you to Louse Camp. Yeah.
And you cross the other bridge where the
Notice Creek.
Notice Creek, and that's where the Jerry Crew incident happened.
Right. That's where that happened. And off to your right as you're heading towards Louse Camp. And there's some berms out there. Like one of those places in that same general area off to your right. That's where Daniel Perez's RV had crashed and burned off that road.
Which we all call it the Daniel Perez Memorial Highway.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't give up any names on that one, but there was a cardboard sign that was created by somebody I know that was placed on one of the Carsonite posts. And I was like, well, what's this all about? And that's when I heard about the story. So since then, some people have made it a memorial highway, although there's no vehicle access. We don't know if...
I think Jonathan... Oh, sorry.
Well, we don't know if he's the reason the road was closed because his vehicle had started a little fire and kind of crashed off the roadway there. But that was soon closed around that time period. And like the road down to the film site, like now you can't get there because too much erosion, that landslide just down from the berm location.
Yeah.
Well, that is all blocked off now. But I've driven it a few times before that took place. But going back to 2010, September, when we started doing our research, I was at Louse Camp. And I decided to walk up the river because if it's good enough for Roger and Bob, it's good enough for me, right?
Right.
So I left Louse Camp and hiked now 1.1 miles to the 12 and 13 bridge, go underneath the bridge, and then I hike up. Now, I think from there, it's almost like 3 miles, 2.5 towards the film site. But for that first trip, I went up there and I would go through the at the MK Davis location. And the reason I know that place very well, because that's where I look for tracks. And that was the first location I decided to grid, walking back and forth looking for the artifacts now that Steven's talking about, right? The stumps, the logs, the big trees in the background. And you probably remember this too, that location is more open because it had been eroded in different
Yeah,
layers.
and it's
Yeah.
also small. There's like I think you guys made like a bench there out of like wood and rocks.
Well, we did. We made an altar out of stone, and not to memorialize, but we call that the gateway to the film sites, because on the
That
5 film sites, that was the farthest downstream. That there's
I
another
remember
one that
that.
Al Hobson used to talk about. He thought maybe it was that. That was another mile down yet, but it's similar, but it's not. But that's what he thought it was. But we never made it one of the 5. It was always, and Al talked about this location. And when we walked through it, we could see why he would. But it's a small sandbar that's overgrown there too as well. So, but a mile up from that is where the MK Davis area was. And of course, as you're walking upstream like we did, you see the terrace on the left. You see the old evidence of the old road system that used to go through there. Because what they did is they graded the shoulder with heavy equipment after the 64 flood to salvage logs. And they accessed it all the way over the 12 and 13 bridge. Now, the original road, the Bluff Creek Road, was just uphill from that. And it was about 4 miles from that location, which at the time was called 12 and 10. That location, it would parallel and go above the Bluff Creek till you got to the Lonesome Ridge Road. But when they to access that, you would drive a little spur and you would drive into the creek. And the bridge wasn't there. 12 and 13 bridge was not there at the time. You just drive into the creek and then you head upstream on the right shoulder. And when you go there now, if you go underneath the bridge, the 12 and 13 bridge, and you look downstream, you'll see the riprap that was placed on the other side to help to keep the water from eroding it away. And they put dirt there to when it was raise it up to put that bridge across. But that was the access. And then you rode the right shoulder heading towards the film site. And according to Barbara Wasson, about a half mile in is where she described that site that Roger and Bob stayed at, about a half mile on the right shoulder. But you were with us when we took the metal detectors.
Yeah, I think me and Austin were. I was with you when we hiked up there. We were up there without Rowdy. I think the day before or something.
Yeah, because you guys, because you're working on your film. What was the name of the film you did?
It was my very first attempt at doing a doc film. The Bluff Creek Film Project.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was pretty good. You did a good job. You used a phone and a selfie stick.
That's pretty much.
And you did everything on that phone, which I was impressed with, by the way.
Pretty much how I did it. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't go like this though. You know. But you did a good job with that. But that's where we figured the campsite was, and we went metal detectors looking for old cans or whatever, but we didn't find any hits there. But we did find a piece of rebar.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, and it was there. You could barely find it, although somebody has taken it since then. I think it disappeared in I want to say 20.
Oh, so recent.
2017.
Yeah, because this was after. Yeah, that was after. Yeah.
2017. I'm walking around and I can't find that rebar anymore. It's gone, but nobody knows anything about it. But we also found another piece of rebar at the DeHinden's X, just downstream, within 100 yards of where Bill Munn's puts the start of the Patterson film. And there's a big old root ball that's tucked against the side, and there's a bunch of young vine maples hiding it. And it's right against the edge. And it's a big root ball. You can tell when you get to look at it. And the end piece of it has been sawed off a long time ago. Because Bob Titmus drew a map. And on that map, there was this root ball with an extended log portion on it. Well, that root ball, as far as I'm concerned, is still there, root ball. And that piece has been removed. You can see where it was been cut. I don't know if I showed it to you, but I showed it to a few people. Yeah, Daniel Perez wasn't too impressed with it, but you know.
Daniel Perez he's a hard audience to please. He's a tough audience. Yeah.
Well, the problem with what a lot of people think that here I'm digressing, but that's what the interview's for, right?
Exactly.
Is that location is downstream. It's 100 yards downstream from where we started our grid map. It's about 100. It's 130 feet, and it's right on the edge of that little peninsula thing is, and it's right where it could have been, right before the river does a slight turn.
Oh, is that like kind of where everybody crosses the river, like the first creek crossing?
It's no, it's that when you do the first creek crossing, and then there's this big open area that you
Yeah.
go on. It's at the end of that open area is where this rebar was. Yeah, and it's right in the side there, and I found it, and I have possession of that historical item, and it's right there in that corner, and that's 130 feet from where we started a grid map. The reason I go by that measurement is because we know that that's where we started the grid map, and we measure at 130 feet, and it's on our maps. We have it on there, and that's a designated area. So imagine if you're Roger and Bob, you're riding along, listen to the water. You've been riding, you're tired, you haven't slept much, you're on day 9, and you're walking along the horse thing, and the horses get spooked by something on your left-hand side. So what I'm getting back at is that, remember we talked about where the campsite was, and it was the shoulder of a graded road all the way down. And so when you get to that area there, they were on the graded road moving down the side of that when they saw it off to the left. Now, imagine what goes on. You're riding on your horses, you get spooked, the horse is reacting, you're trying to control the horse, and you're having difficulty. You're having difficulty controlling the horse.
Yep.
And so now you have to, and that horse you lay the horse down, and you lay the horse down, and now you get your stirrup bent, you get your foot stuck, you have to get that released, you have to get the saddlebag open, you have to pull your camera out, you have to be able to and film, and you have to look for where the creature went, and then you run up the road to close the gap, and then she goes this way, you cross the creek to go get a better. Now that's the Hendon's X.
Yeah.
That not where that root ball is. I believe that's where it started.
It started,
And-
yeah.
Because you can go to the Hendon's X and try to pull off the whole thing and have a clock going. How long do you think it's going to take to do all these things? And I find it difficult to fit the whole time parameter in that location. And then you look at where Bill Munns is placed, frame 1, Rogers frame 1 for the film, 954 frames from that position. And then he moves on the direction, then he goes past where we started our anchor point for our grid map, go past that section. And so anyhow, I know I diverted a little bit from it, but that's some of the historical stuff you see. Now, I didn't fall upon that till later, but originally going back to 2010, we're focused on, before Stephen and Ian show up, I'm just gridding the MK Davis area because that's what I was familiar with. And I didn't find anything that stood out. I found stumps, but they're not in the proper positions.
So you were
I
there.
saw some trees, but they're
you were-
dead on top. There was snags, but they're not where they're supposed to be.
You were
Except for the
there looking.
amigos.
You were there looking before Robert or not Robert. You're Robert. You were looking there before Stephen.
Me,
and
Robert.
Ian. They were there before Stephen and Ian were looking, but they kind of really talked you into trying to find it, right? The film site.
Yeah, well, they eventually talked me. Well, I guess I talked myself into it, but at that time they didn't quite talk me into it. I was there to film them. I'm just saying that I'd been to that geographic area in 2007
before they started looking.
before I even knew that they didn't know where the film site was.
Okay.
And I remember hearing some hearsay about it possibly being where the Bat Boxes was by MK Davis. I mean, the Peter Byrne location, because that was told to me by other people. Like I think Tom mentioned that, but it still didn't mean that much to me. See, I didn't have the PowerPoint presentation by Stephen. I didn't have that connection yet. And now in 2010, I'm looking for a good story so I can document. And that's the reason I'm there. And the story's getting really interesting. And then when I went and put boots on the ground, I walked up the creek looking and trying to figure stuff out because I figured I've always wanted to do that section all the way up the creek. I didn't know what to expect. I was by myself. Don't recommend that. You get hurt. You don't tell anybody where you're at. my buddies aren't supposed to do it for the next couple days. I'm up there just sightseeing, so to speak. But
Yeah.
based on what I learned, I'm like, well, obviously they walked up this. That's according to the story. So it's got to be one of these places. So that's what I was doing. And then I got to the familiar place, and then I'm walking back and forth because I remember the old, what looks like a road cut on the far back. I go, that always struck me as being a road, and yet there it is. But
Yep.
but how does that fit in with the big trees? The big trees don't work there, and a few other odds and ends. And it's tear stepped because if you look at the old footage, like on the roll of film, beginning part before the film starts filming the Patterson, Patty in the film, somebody is holding a camera. Most likely it's Bob, and then Roger's pulling the pack animals around, right? And they go up this little, and they come back around. It's fall colors. That's the big washout slide area that goes up, and the edge of that sandbar is like a big old V going up in the end. And on the back of that is that old road cut that you'll see. You probably remember seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what threw a lot of people off. Anyhow, that's the area there. So by the time I got to get to Steve and Ian watching them discuss it and talk about it, it kind of went, oh. I usually tell people it's a red pill and a blue pill, and I took the red pill.
You got hooked.
Yeah, so now I'm not just a videographer. I have questions, and I'm asking them the questions. A good videographer just keeps his mouth shut and just records them. Now I'm asking questions.
You're a documentarian at that point.
Yes, now I'm number 3. Member number 3. So that kind of got me there, and it took us a couple of years. And like on the last, that was 2010. At the end of 2010, Stephen was convinced that the location was a site they were calling the Cliff Brackman site. Yeah, let me go over I've only mentioned 2 so far. Let me go over I mentioned 3. MK Davis was the farthest downstream, and they're all within a half mile of each other. And then where you used to park your car, where the old corral was, where the bat boxes are, and the old fire ring and the old white tin shoe, that's the Peter Byrne area. And then you go downstream, like our trail now hooks a right and heads down. That takes you down to your first feeder stream crossing, and that's called the Gulch. And that's where Christopher Murphy felt the site was, because he asked other people, and it's in his books for that area there. And then you go a little further downstream, and then we're crediting that to Daniel Perez, called the Perez site. And in 2003, according to the movie footage of their filming a show down there, the same time they have the symposium, Daniel's with all the other guys, and they're talking about where it is, and they can't remember. And so Daniel's standing there, he's talking about this is the place. So he got credit for a spot. And that's called the Perez area. And Ian also talks about, he ran into Daniel Perez a few years back, and he said he was lurking around there. So again, that's more evidence to give Daniel credit for that location. Then at the very end, we call the Cliff Brackman. It's right before the creek turns and goes straight, the bowling alley now that we know. And there's a big upper sandbar on the edge of that curved turn that was all overgrown, which was difficult to navigate through. So overgrown, you couldn't really see much.
Right.
You had to follow game trails and almost lean over to try to get through without getting your eyes poked. And yeah, but you could see that the sandbar there, the gravel bar, was pretty open, and that was the Hinden's X. So looking at that, you go, yeah, this looks like it could be something, but let's go find out. But in 2012, I'm going to say, no, it was 2011. Let's see, I'm looking to check my memory spot. 2011, it's Finding Bigfoot had an episode there.
Yep.
Where Bob had gone down there. They rode horses to a certain point, and then they couldn't get further because the berm's in the way. So they had they have a certain point, and then they walk down there, and there's a scene that Bob is saying yes, yes, yes.
That was
and then
here.
you have a Bobo on the other side of the creek, on the angled shore area. He's walking along, and they're saying, there it is. They're trying to do that film scene, but you can't film in there. It was too overgrown, and the lighting was too dark.
I remember seeing that episode. I was watching that episode. I was like, wait a minute. That's not the site.
it was, but it's
I
not.
mean, like there's nothing in there to say that was the site to me, even though I knew that was the site. It
Well,
didn't look like the site.
well, nothing looks like it today. I mean, it does now when you start moving debris and vegetation out of the way to get a view shed. Back then, it was hard to tell because people were walking around with this 1971 or aerial view that DeHenden did, although a lot of people didn't pay much attention to that. But it was the frame 352. They're all walking around with that, looking for that shot. Well, you're not going to get that shot because it's overgrown.
Yeah,
So, like the Bob Titmus map, it's laid out on a big open area, was it not?
it was.
But it's the shape of it doesn't fit the actual site, right? But you could take that shape and you could drop it on the MK Davis site and it fits, right?
Yeah,
You could take that and maybe try to drop it on the Christopher Murphy area and say, well, you can't tell anymore because it's all eroded away.
yeah,
But you still can tell because the distance between the so-called big trees and the opposite shore is not long enough to put the site there. So you would
yeah,
have to shoot farther north and
yeah.
go into the Daniel Perez site location. And that's probably why Daniel felt that was more appropriate for the location. But
I mean,
Daniel,
like even seeing the MK Davis site, there's nothing there. It's not. It's too small.
well, it's a huge, actually, MK Davis area is huge. It's almost to the point of being too big. Remember, it opens way up.
Oh, that's right. I've only been there
It's
one
huge.
time.
It's just down from the Rocky Plug. You're thinking of the Peter Byrne location. That would never fit.
No.
No, because it's a northerly direction and 300 something feet. What's it, 375? I mean, I got it. Don't quote me on that, but that's a lot of room. And now you're shooting north, so that means you have to have a creek there somewhere, right? And you
Yeah.
have to fit that distance in a northerly direction. You can't do that in the Peter Byrne location at all. It's too narrow. And you're right, it's too narrow. You get the Christopher Murphy area, you can't do it where the so-called big tree was pointed out.
It's
The
still
trees
too
move up the hill.
narrow.
You have to go farther upstream towards Daniel Perez location to look for the big trees to pull off the northern angle. But if you keep going up the stream, then you get to a place that we call the Cliff Barackman site. And the reason for that is because Stephen asked everybody who had claim to a location if they can mark it on a map for us so we can compare it. The only map we ever got back was the one that Renee DeHinden gave to Daniel Perez because he asked for it, which is a kind of a smaller topo map with a blue X across it. And that is the place. But if you don't know how to read a map, you're not going to know how to apply that to the topography of the area.
Right.
But that was the right spot. And Cliff had been up there too, and he felt that his location that we credit him for, that he felt that was the right spot. And you notice I'm using words like felt, most likely, because it's all guess until you prove it. And so
I think Cliff was pretty convinced that that was the spot. Knowing Cliff personally, he's a very he likes he doesn't take everything. He's no dummy, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
Man, he does his due diligence and research and everything. So
for nothing, yeah. So now you know why we looked at that site location and gave it more credence.
exactly.
So our job is to prove it. You can say whatever you want, but if you can prove it with the artifacts and be able to match things, then you got a good case. So what our role became at the end of 2010 is we decided that location, the Cliff Brackman location, was where we're going to grid it out. But we didn't have time to do that at that point because we're talking about September, October. They closed the place because the Port Orb cedar has a virus that kills the Port Orb cedar. It's waterborne. So they closed the area off for about 8 months.
And that's
So
why 2012 was the year that he had Bill Munns come out. And
Yeah, in 2011 was when we figured out where it was. No questions asked. And Cliff was right, that location. And Bobo was right. And Bob not Bob was right.
Bob.
Not blah, 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 blah. Yeah, he was right about it too. So you have 3 people who I've heard mention and stories come back to me that they felt that was the location. Well, kudos to Bob. There's even stories of in 2003, because you talked to, where Bobo said he took some of those pictures of everybody standing there near yeah. And he talked to some other people that said, "Oh no, somebody else took that photo." But Bobo said he was there. He was there. He said he walked upstream and he was with Bob, and Bob said this place kind of looks like it, and that would be kind of in the general vicinity, most likely where the Dehendes X is, where. Because you look at the map, you have a straightaway called the bowling alley, and it makes a 90-degree turn, and then it makes a little S turn. That geological feature is so obvious.
Yeah.
And when Cliff sent Steven a topo map with a orange spot on it or yellow spot on it, that's the location, which matches the same location that that was given to Daniel Perez by
From
Dehinden,
yeah.
with the X on it. They're one and the same locations.
Well, it's funny because there's been claims by people that says the Bluff Creek Project is lying about the actual film site area, which is completely bogus, false claims. Because I've been to a lot of those areas that you showed me that were these certain areas that were by M.K. Davis or what was it, Peter Burns site. And then when you guys showed me the film site, I'm like, yeah, I see the frame 5052. I see the Laurel and Hardy trees, which is next to the big tree. I see Smiley Stump. I see the big stump. I see the two little stumps that were further left on the frame. I'm like, that's all here. And part of the remnant were the big log that you see laying down. And
yeah, towards the front of the frame. Yeah,
the log isn't there, but where that pile up at the end is still there. I'm like, this is the place.
Well, imagine showing up there with the photograph that was taken in 1967, or even the aerial shot that Renee probably did in 71, and trying to fit that in on an upper sandbar that's overgrown with vegetation to a point where you can't see those artifacts. Like right on the edge, when you climb up, you could see a pile of organic material, but you can't see the detail that we see today. The only open area was right where, I guess, right where where it opens up at the very beginning of the film site. That was more open than anywhere else, but it soon got overgrown not too far in. And when we started doing our work on it, it almost looked like a natural pathway, which it was, because when we put the game cameras up, you could see where the animals traveled, and they followed that pathway where their opening was, and then they cut over to the right, just like Patty did in the film. And there's another corridor that worked its way off to the right. So animals use that to cut across the upper sandbar there in a direct line. So we're talking game trails, we're talking crawling tunnels, and then it's a good sized upper sandbar. Anyhow, so
it's big,
yeah. So when we figured that this place would be good for it, because I was the last of the four, which included Rowdy Kelly. He was number 4 that helped us for the gridding at the time, because Ian had family issues and he had to go back to North Carolina, which left us short a partner. And I talked Rowdy into it.
And he's still there to this day.
And he's still there. I guess he got taxed a lot with the first day, because we were actually tunneling through the brush, cutting holes using compass direction, back bearings, forward bearings, shooting on a northerly direction, flagging it a straight line to the very back from across the creek at a place that I chose, which is an Aldridge branch. We could tie a little ribbon on it.
Right.
Which ironically was within 10 yards of where Bill Munns decided where Roger's frame number 1 position was.
Is that ribbon still there to this day?
No, I took it down because I tried to get rid of some of the plastic trash.
Right, okay.
But if you look closely at it, the branch had grown a little bit and the ribbon was tight.
Oh.
So you can almost see, if you know where to look, you can see kind of where that ribbon, it tried to growing into that ribbon, because that ribbon was up for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, I had somebody trying to give me a hard time because we put in little wire flags when we gridded out the map every 30-foot square. We used those wire markers so we could find it with the metal detector if we had to relocate these places. So It's just a little flagging it's a color flagging. We use pink and orange for our work. Our meridian lines were orange. The corner pieces were pink, and some were still there. If you look, a lot of them have been eaten by rodents and broken down, but the wire is still in the corners. We pulled a lot of them out that are in the way, but we use that to mark the corners because we had to draw in the artifacts, which I could talk about a lot later, but we're still on the very first part of trying to figure this thing out. So I sat there in 2010 at the very end, 2020. I sat there sitting on a pile of debris, looking down at the south, down into the creek on DeHinden's X, looking at it, going, I can see this. This could work,
Yeah.
but we have to prove it. Stephen was already going, yeah, this is the place. And he always wanted to get me to agree, and I wouldn't. Now, Ian had visions of it farther downstream, so he would never agree. So Stephen says, I think this is it. Ian goes, no way, it's got to be farther down. But look, there's a big tree. But no, that's camera deception. It's so constantly when we have a preset idea of what we expect, we're not going to see what we need to see. So that's one of the ways in the research is you don't anticipate or expect anything. Just start with the facts, but start with your own facts. Don't take work from other people. Start over. And that's what we did. Because if this person's off course and then you take over and you continue that path, you missed all this stuff. So we had to start over and going, well, we ain't going that way.
No.
And I think that was helpful. But yeah, people always say, Stephen feels like, yeah, they didn't really know where it was. Our group found it. But I just want to say that we did confirm it. And we had 4 of us that were toward the very end trying to push it through. And by the end of, I would say by the end of October, on October 30th of 2011, they were getting ready to close everything down. And I had to get home for Halloween. We were taking my kids trick-or-treating. So I spend the night on the film site. And I heard foxes. I didn't hear anything scary. The water was soothing. It was beautiful. But I was visualizing, could this really be it? And based on at that point, I was trying to finish the grid maps and everything was starting to look really good. But I said, I'm not going to say anything, make any opinions until I get home. And I draw everything out on a piece of paper and compare it with DeHinden 71. Stephen was trying to get me to admit it. Even Roddy was at the back going, this is probably the place. What are the odds of having this maple tree with a crook on the branch be at the same place
Right.
like this one has it? But even though all that stuff points the finger, says it's right here, my reputation, I want to be right. I'm going to wait till I compare all these maps. So I did. So I drew them all out. For the record, at this point, Daniel Perez wasn't so sure we would ever find it again. He wasn't on page with us. So we did our first generation map and I compared it with DeHinden's and all these artifacts were popping up. Because when we were cutting holes through these tunnels of vegetation to run our compass bearings north-south, and then half of that east-west, and then every 30 foot, put a marker, and then run a north-south of every 30 foot and pick squares, and then go through and draw in the artifacts in the 30-foot squares on a map that you're going to have to construct later. When you
Yeah.
compare it with the DeHinden's overview of 71. And that's the process we went through. And that's why I held my opinion until the very end. And when I sent him to Stephen, here's your finished copies. He was excited. He sent them to Daniel. And Daniel goes, congratulations. But it took a while to get him to jump in because he's one of the guys who was saying
Yeah.
it's probably washed away.
Yeah.
And he couldn't find it officially. So, but he wasn't very good at reading maps because he had the answers in front of him. He has, Renee gave him what he asked for.
Yep.
Renee was also known as to not give too much information to his competitors. But in this case, he gave him what he needed. It's just that you don't know what to do with that.
Exactly.
So that was one of the problems. But anyhow, it's been a great journey. And in the book, we documented stories of finding things. And we wanted something that was entertaining enough to not be a boring book like everybody else's. So we put some personal stories in here. I know I put a way too much personal stories in here.
There's some good stuff in that book. I have a copy of it at home. I love it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that book is, derived from a bunch of videos that you made documenting the film, finding the film site.
Yes. So here's an interesting thing. Dustin Sievers is getting some flack for
Wait,
this because
well, I just want to say Dustin Sievers came into the project after
yeah.
me, so technically he's the newest member. I just want to clear the air there.
Oh yeah. So you're senior, he's junior.
He's a junior. I'm a senior.
Got it. Got it. Yes. So and by the way, also for Mr. Sievers, he's one of the handful of people who's watched all 72 videos of these people getting lost and looking for something and can't find it, and they talk about it.
Which I have something to add to that after you say this. Whatever you're going to say.
Okay. Yeah, but yeah, I'm old now. I'll forget what I'm going to say. And so anyhow, so he's watched all 72, but he was helpful for that. And I did kind of forget the momentum I was going on for that. But going back to sitting there and looking at it, when I was sitting there on the last day, spending the night thinking about everything I did, and I even talked about it in the book. And when I got home and made the maps, I think I made it October 1st. November 1st. After I got back, we went trick-or-treating. The next day, I got right down to drawing the maps, and then I got them done, and then I made the connections on. That's why there's a date on the first generation of the map.
Okay.
And that's when I decided that, yes, it's not a coincidence. It's when you run out of the English alphabet of artifacts that match.
This is the place.
I even taken people that know nothing about the film site says, do you think these are the same places? And people would look at it and go, yeah, I think, yeah, it looks like it. Yeah. I had one person go, so why did you draw a picture of this? Thank you very much. It's like, yes, that is the right place.
You proved my point there. Yeah. It just, that one question.
Yeah. And that's, and you briefly mentioned before that some people aren't willing to agree that's the location. And what I run into is I'm not gonna mention any names, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
It's the farthest south downstream, but I'm not gonna mention any names. When you go back in 2003, Stephen told me not to say names, but I won't say the names of this. But there was a gentleman that was there in 2003 that went downstream and saw the name I can't mention, but M and the K. Yeah. Anyhow, he goes down there and he looks at this and he goes, this could be it. So he shares that with that guy with the initials. And then soon after that, that's the storyline. That's all the marbles go in the jar for that one. Yeah. This is kind of digressing a little bit, but not so much as when we were working on the camera project, which was after 2012, that Jamie was initiating, we were assisting, and I think Rowdy and I were the first ones to start putting cameras up. When that process started, we would go up all the time and check the footage. Remember, the place was closed for 8 months, and we had 8 months of footage. We had to figure out how to keep the batteries good for 8 months. That was a challenge, but Jamie was a genius with solar panels running to keep cameras going, and we did a whole bunch of stuff till we found good batteries for it. The cameras were better.
Yeah, exactly.
But we were checking the cameras, and one of these cameras, we see M.K. Davis walking down there with the Japanese film crew. And he stops at the camera and he's pointing at the camera. And we put the camera on the end of a log at the rocky plug where all the organic material piles up because it narrows and it shoots it to the left. So we put it on one of the logs. And by the way, for the record, in 2012, the winter of 2012 and 2013, the winter, I put a camera up right at that intersection on Sandy Beach. And that was our first recording of the Humboldt Martin, by the way, just for the record. Yeah. Anyhow, talk about that later. But we also took a Japanese crew down there too, to our film site, which is the actual film site upstream. It was five gentlemen, all chain smokers, hiking with heavy equipment and smoking. Not a word of English. Only one gentleman spoke broken English.
I love the chain smoker comment. It's hilarious.
Oh yeah, and we got back. Eventually, they sent us some footage. It's in Japanese, so I know what they're saying, but we're talking about it. But there's a laugh track that goes on and off constantly. He would say something, and then there'd be words, Japanese, written underneath or whatever, and it'd be some laughing going on. We're like, what did they say we said? But there was a lot of that. But the Japanese film crew that Inca Davis took down there also has him filming him striding across that open section of the gravel bar, which is way down low. It's not at the height of the other gravel bars. So he has his reason to believe that's the place, and he hasn't changed. And Stephen has offered him to show him the area. I realize he's an older gentleman now. Maybe he can't make the trip. But we make these offers to people to show them. We are convinced. We're not 100% convinced that Patty exists. We're not 100% convinced that Patty was filmed there. I mean, that was a Bigfoot film there. But we are 100% convinced that that is where everything was filmed. And that's the film site.
100.
Yeah, so that's
like,
100%.
I can't dispute that. And the thing I wanted to mention with the 72 videos, I'm currently in the process of trying to download all of those videos and trying to shorten them into maybe an hour documentary.
Yeah.
So everybody can enjoy those. Because like 72 videos is a daunting task of videos to watch.
Well, not only that, think about making those.
Yeah.
We have our IPA song, which is the opening song and the closing song. Oh, let's talk about that real quick. The IPA song, a bunch of young girls at the time, and Bobo said that he was their managers, and we're over in the Redwood countries. It's 10 o'clock at night, and Bobo goes, "Hey, dude, check this out." And he plays the IPA song, full blast of the speakers in the parking lot.
And IPA, the song IPA, like as Robert said, was the opening song for the videos on the Bluff Creek Project. It was also the theme song for a while for the Bluff Creek Project podcast. It's a band called Dog Party.
And they're older now, but we actually interviewed them in the Bluff Creek podcast.
Yep.
A while back.
Yep, we did.
And we still use their song for the, not for the In the Field. We use Jonathan Easley's song for In the Field, but we use for the podcast version on the telephone, we use the IPA song.
Yeah, the IPA song. Still do. Traditionally, yeah, we had to keep it for that.
Yeah, so which is pretty cool.
So
anything else about that? Those 12 films, those 72 shots. But Dustin Stevens, when we first met him, he goes, "Yeah, I watched them all." It's like, "Are you okay? You're not running a fever or anything?"
Right. I mean, hey, all credit to that dude. He's a beast, man. When it comes to doing historical stuff, like all credit to him. Like he's awesome.
Yeah. Now, before I forget, because I'm old, the reason we went off on Dustin Severs is because his new book that's been out here for about a year or so, people are giving him a hard time because he did a lot of research on what they would say or how they would say it. And so when he wrote the dialogue of possible conversations they would be having to make the story flow better, and I love his approach to education, entertaining. Crichton, I when I'm doing my fiction stuff, I like the way Crichton did his work.
Oh,
so emulate that.
Michael Crichton, who did Jurassic Park.
Yes. Yeah, and the Andromeda strain, I believe, too.
I think so.
He's did quite a bit of stuff. But anyhow, so when I was doing the dialogue for the Bluff Creek in the book, I watched my videos. And the dialogue in the book, when we're out in the field, we're talking, it is the actual dialogue.
Word for word.
95% of the dialogue that's taking place out in the field. And I had to listen to that stuff and write it down because I wanted to keep it as accurate as possible. And I watched those 72 videos many times, especially when you produce them, you watch them a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I just wanted to say that the dialogue in the book is pretty much what was going on. Like you and I are having a conversation, and sometimes when we're talking, we go, and, actually, I don't do that much.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. So if you write that in the book, who's going to want to listen to that, huh?
Yeah.
So you eliminate and you let it flow better. And sometimes when we're talking in circles. We're not getting to the subject we want to talk about.
Not
because we don't
fast
have a
enough.
pre-written script.
Yep.
So we just got right down to the business and say, well, the circle, circle around, circle around. So we got right down to it, and we cut out a lot of dialogue because we don't bore the hell out of you. So just the important stuff, what was going on, and so going back to Dustin Severs, he created a lot of that stuff based on how he felt they would be talking, based on what they normally say or how they do it. Now Renee has an accent, and so Dustin had to work that into the storyline of how, and some people give him a hard time about that, So
you
it's a
know,
little creativity there.
you know what? I Dustin has done more than anybody writing a book about Bluff Creek or the players involved in Bluff Creek probably would ever do.
Yeah.
So I think
And
Dustin doesn't deserve that.
yes. And before we forget, could you put a plug in for his work? I don't have it sitting in front of me for the title.
Oh,
Something about
neither.
something in California. You
I
got it nearby?
oh God, I don't have mine nearby either.
Oh, mine's in the other room because I was going to do it in the other room. It's sitting there on the thing. I didn't bring it.
No, but I will put his book where you can buy it in the show notes 100%. I feel like a horrible friend right now, Dustin. Sorry. Hey, but you know what? We're from Kansas City each, so we got that going.
Yeah, we all, and there's no Bigfoot in Kansas City, according to Dustin.
Oh, I would have to agree with him on that one.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
I thought I'd throw that in there because, like the storyline of the book, a lot of the dialogue is what actually was spoken. And I looked at a lot of footage. I wanted to be as accurate as possible, but I didn't want to bore anybody. And then we've had a lot of experience that's happened to us. Like I talk about, hearing the ladies giggling. I think I talked about it in the book. That's me hiking by myself late in the afternoon. It's getting dark. I'm navigating down the canyon, and you can relate to that. You're by yourself, and you're thinking, and your mind is somewhere else. You're autopilot because you're exhausted. You've been working on a whole bunch of notes and everything, and you're filming on the way back, or maybe not, depends. And then you hear a bunch of women talking on the other side of the creek at this one turn, and so you yell to them because you don't want to surprise them. And
yeah.
you find out, and as soon as you yell to them, they stop talking.
There's like, what?
And then you go over there, and there's nobody there. And there's deer prints in the section where there's little pools of water or whatever. And then there's a hillside that kind of goes up, kind of steep, but it kind of fingers in. And you're like, maybe I created this. So you walk back to where you were and you listen, and you hear the river pushing sticks. You hear the sound of the water. You hear the acoustics, but you don't hear the women talking and giggling. And you're like, okay, we're out of here. And every time I go there, I stop and I listen.
Just to see if you can hear it again.
All I hear is the water pushing sticks to doing things, not vocabulary.
See, it Bluff Creek, it's just, in my opinion, people are like, it's not, oh, Bluff Creek isn't active, and, I believe I'm 98% convinced that Bigfoot is real. And that's, everybody's different. Like, you're different in your belief. I don't know if you think they might be real or if they live in the area of Bluff Creek. But I mean, there's some weird areas. There's some weird things that still happen in Bluff Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the times, kind of closing, I want to end out with this a little bit, and I don't want to give too much away because I plan on putting it in a Sabe episode for this July. But you and Jamie were in an area above the film site, and you were playing the flute,
Mm-hmm.
and you were done playing it for a little bit, and then something was mimicking your flute playing, and Jamie got that on audio.
Yeah, usually they just throw rocks at me to tell me to stop, learn how to play.
Like,
But it's like a
stop!
twin. But yeah, I was playing the flute, and then Jamie was running his recorder, and so he says, Robert, come here. So I stop playing. I walk over there with him. He goes, I'm hearing something down there. Listen. So I'm listening, and his vehicle's parked there. Recorder's right on top of the roof, shooting down in that little canyon on the side, and it sounds like somebody's trying to play a flute down there. And I know there's birds at night, but I haven't heard that before there. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing this. And then I even did some loud, saw whistles back and heard nothing after that. So whatever it was to stop. But yeah, even at Twin Lakes, I know it's diverting a little bit, but I was at Twin Lakes. I was doing podcast interviews in the fields. And I interviewed Bart, I think it was Bart first, and then I interviewed
It was Bobo.
Bobo. But that was in the evening time. But during the day, I was down by the edge of the water there at Twin Lakes, where the campsite is. And before I start playing, I just blow them really loud because I like the echo off the water and off the canyon. And it also lets think know somebody's here. So I blow that, and then I start playing. And I was recording myself because I like the way the water sounds off the canyon, not off the water, the way the music goes. And so I was recording the whole thing, but I was making real loud noises, listening to the echo. And then I started hearing some commotion because I was real specific. I said, you guys, Bart, Bobo, I'm going to be doing some recording. So if you guys could not slam your car doors and yell and scream and carry on, I appreciate it. No problem. Sometimes they'd forget. And I go back down there and I get my chair set up, and now I'm going some real loud calls. While I'm doing the loud calls, I hear a bunch of talking and noise going on up behind me where the cars are. I'm like, man, what's wrong with those people? Didn't I just tell them to be quiet?
Yeah.
And then I try to play some, and then it's still. I go up there. I go, what's going on? I mean, can you guys keep it down? And that's when Bo goes, hey, dude, somebody just threw a rock at me. I go, what? He was parked right next to the parking area, just because I had a Bart's car who was sleeping in it, and Bo was sleeping in the back of his pickup truck. And my car's kind of right where the parking area is. I was down there. So 3 cars are there. Anyhow, so I go talking to Bobo about it. And Bobo was at the back of his pickup. He was moving stuff around. And then there's a hillside on the left. Remember, I think it was last summer, the summer before last. You guys heard something around there. You guys were doing your thing. But that hillside, which isn't steep at all.
It's not very steep.
Rocks can't roll off of that.
No.
It's not steep enough. So a rock hit the ground behind him, and then bounced off the road and went down towards the lake through all that brush and stuff.
Yeah, that's not a pine cone falling from the tree to bounce off the road. That has to be something physically thrown.
That's the whole thing about it. It has to be that way. And just as last time I was up there with Bart. So Bart and I spent 15, 16 days on the road. And we decided to spend the last couple of days at Twin, the same location I'm talking about. So we're there, and we're going to have peace and quiet. Nobody's going to bother us.
Peace and quiet.
Well, that trip, Cliff shows up, and Bobo shows up, and never knew we were there, with any of that. But anyhow, so the first night is Bart's running his thermals, and I'm doing my thing. I guess I don't have my night vision anymore, but I have my recorder now. That's what I was trying to record. So I set it up on a tripod, shooting towards the lake, because I didn't want Bart snoring, so I shot it towards the lake. So I got my own snoring, so I learned my lesson. Don't put it next to me, and my wife's absolutely correct. You do snore, Robert. So I heard what sounded like something's walking around my tent, trying to be quiet and standing there, and then it walks back around. And I swear up and down I recorded that. I got to have it. So I had to go look for it later, but it flashed back to the same time. The trip before that is when I was with you guys. And remember, I gave you guys that spot, and I was with my son, and we were down at the junction between the 2 lakes.
Yep.
Yeah. And something walked around or my tent, my son's tent, and then walked past my car and my tent. And I didn't have a recorder going, but it was distinct foot placements. And I thought maybe I hallucinated, but my son said I heard it too.
I remember you guys telling us about it. You were like, we were getting there, and we had to walk around our tent.
And that's the same location. Now let's go back where the site is. And now I'm playing my flute on the shore, and Bobo's parked in that same general area, and a rock lands behind him. And Bobo had stories too of Cliff and him being there, and something jumping up into the lake from the other side and thrashing around. So there's always these weird stories you hear about those areas, and it just reinforces it sometimes. But going back to the Bluff Creek area, yes, I did hear that there. I was also camping with my wife, and I heard somebody around the tent say "Buenos dias," woke me up. And
That's so weird.
Well, the irony of this is Mike Mraz passed away from COVID, and we spread his ashes at the film site. And we also spread him on different locations at his ex-wife suggestion. And that was Me hearing what I did was after that. And I just wondered in the bottom of my heart if I wondered that was Mike telling me everything was okay. That Buenos Dias, which is, it's not
Wait,
not oscillatory. It was at night. Good day.
I was there during that trip though when you guys spread the ashes.
Yes.
That's when the Buenos you heard Buenos Dias?
No, that was later that fall.
Oh, it was okay. It was the same year, but later after the.
That was the summer when we did that. And then later that fall, I finally get a chance to show Regina the place. And we camped her at the berm. And that's when I was woken up by that. There's other things that were mentioned, but I'm not going to talk about it. But that kind of makes you think. And that's the same place we heard the flute. That's also the same area where it's in the book where hiked all the way up the 2 miles up to the cell site off 12 and 13H.
That's where you
I made my calls and I'm walking back and I hear something walking above me. And when I stop, it stops. I remember I know I told that story.
I think it's in the book as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I go on, I do a quick stop. It does a quick stop. And then after that, I just keep walking and I hear it again. It was almost to where I'm at. I make a sharp turn on the road and then I wait because I'm hoping to be in a position where I can look over and see it when it drops in that ravine at the end of the road and goes up.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I could see it. But when it gets to the edge of the ravine, instead of crossing it where I can see it, it makes a left-hand turn and goes directly towards where I am. But it's also vegetated and I hear it picking up. So I drew my handgun first and then I said, time for my bear spray. So I put that away, got my bear spray. And now I'm thinking, what are you going to do with that? So I headed out because I was supposed to meet Jonathan and a couple other guys.
Oh, it was me and you, or me and Jonathan that were meeting you guys, or meeting you down there.
You guys eventually got there, but I was meeting Jonathan and two other individuals, and that's why I was there at the site, and that's why I went for the cell call. I was walking down, and then at that point, I'm walking, looking over my shoulder, and I didn't hear anything else. And that was also that night that we the following night.
Oh, I had my cousin with me. You guys were camping I think it was the same day.
Yeah, at Scorpion.
You guys camped at Scorpion. I remember.
Yeah, and Jonathan and his friends camped over at the
film site. And then me and Jamie and my cousin and my dog were at the berm.
Well, it's also related to that because there's a bunch of noise going on above you. And
Jamie came to me. He's like, Tate, a bear or something pushed a tree down. A bear pushed a tree down or something. I was like, what? I was in my car because my cousin and I were.
That's the same location associated with what I heard off that road in there. That's where the flu was. That's where Buenos Dias was. And there's other things that we've experienced in that area. So
I say the berm area. That area is pretty freaky. There's something going on.
Yeah, it's people usually don't stay there. Just a handful of people do. But I'm just saying, you were mentioning before that people still have stories about the Bluff Creek area, and the question is it still active? I just know that I've experienced a lot of interesting things, and I can explain. And you have some as well, and everybody has their different way of an experience, like
interpreting
even
it.
Even at the cell site. There are some members who swear up and down sightings there, and we hear things moving around there. There's no doubt. But we've also seen deer cutting up. We've seen mountain lion activity in that area. So who knows what?
Lots of bear too.
Yeah. So who knows what? Like I talk about this too. If let's say you have a sighting and I'm not there to see it, and then for me just to poo-poo it and say, "Oh, you were hallucinating," when I wasn't there, it just doesn't seem a little fair, does it?
Not at all.
And so I keep that in the back of my mind too. But I do ask questions like, well, what time of day was it? Who was with you? What season was it? Did you do this? Were you parked here? Did you do anything to draw in any activity? So those are questions I usually ask. That tells me a lot more about what happened. But there's people you and I both know who have experiences that they talked about, and they swear up and down they've experienced that there. And I've definitely heard movement around that location, but I haven't been privileged to see anything moving around except bears, mountain lions, deers, and not deers, deer.
Deer.
Yeah, deer.
Exactly. Oh,
so that's a good question for the Bluff Creek area. And the more we go there, the more we experience, the more we have to second guess. Like in your Sabe work, you're with
Ron
it
Reed
goes
a
with the
lot.
names again. You're with a few people, and you guys experience some stuff, and you guys talk about it too in your work with the Sabe.
Yeah, 100%. We do a lot of the. I mean, we try to go out there and do our due diligence and trying to work the whole area as much as we can and as critical as we can, and just come at it from different angles and all that. So,
Yeah, I
but
think it's important. Yeah, with an open mind.
open mind, yeah, that's the key. You know, um, so Robert, we're coming
Yeah,
down to closing time here.
yeah,
Um, I want to thank you for taking last minute time to do this. I very much appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, a fellow friend. I
yeah.
always say my mentor in the Bigfoot world. So
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, so that's it. So what Tate's saying is that a lot of the stuff we do isn't set up in advance. We don't make stuff up as we make it up as we go.
I literally, I can tell people the timestamp. I literally texted you. Um, I was like, hey Robert, can you do an interview today? At here it is. Yeah, it was this morning basically at 12:41. I
Yeah,
asked you.
yeah. Robert, get your script all written up. Like here's my script right here.
There it is.
Just a few names in case you ask me. I got to remember. Yeah, the reason I wrote down the names here because I had a really interesting trip. I went. I think it was last spring. I went to Northeast Oregon to the town of Baker. I think Baker City. And there was a the Blue Mountain conference. So I was one of
Oh
the
yeah.
speakers there. I got to meet Scott Villette, Hannah, his wife, and Jonathan Easy was there. I saw him on three separate trips, and even Damon later. We went to the oh uh, what is it? The guy who had all the sightings up there
Well, wait.
and the
Sightings.
tracks. His son's Mike.
Son's Mike.
Oh well, sorry,
Wait, the sighting of
Freeman.
Freeman,
Freeman
Michael
site.
Freeman.
I got to
Michael
see the
Freeman.
Freeman site, and Jonathan showed it to me, and Scott Valet showed me some stuff, and we also were up there with Tom Seawood and Peggy, and they were at the conference too, so I got to meet him there, and we traveled around. And I got to see some interesting stuff and spent some time out there, and it was kind of cool. And there's another guy I can't remember his name, but he made great T-shirts out there, so I got a chance to spend time with him. And Damon was up there, surprisingly.
Just shows up all
Damon Irons, yeah.
just
So
showing up, man.
it's like the number of people that I know and the odds of meeting him somewhere else, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. Um, but again, Robert, I thank you for doing this last minute.
Sure.
I do appreciate it. We will be seeing each other in July, and we got some more content for Native Giants coming out in that time. Well, I guess after because I got to film it first, but yeah,
Yeah.
there'll be some good stuff coming out. Everybody's going to be seeing a lot more Robert in the Sabe series, so I'm pretty excited about that. But
Yeah. So get prepared for it. Lots of coffee
lots
or,
of
or Coke,
coffee.
whatever it takes.
Uh,
Yeah. I
y-
still have to finish. I still have to finish up those last podcasts, the field stuff I did.
yes, there's going to be So Robert
Yeah.
is working on some last podcasts in the field for the Bluff Creek Project podcast, so that will be coming out soon,
Yeah.
within a few weeks. So be looking
Yeah.
out for those.
I got to get those finished. It's just like there's an editing program that if I don't keep using it, I forget. And
Yep.
then I haven't done it for a bit. So I have to ask my daughter to help me. She's real busy. Yeah. And I
Always.
know we didn't have a lot of time to do this, but is there time to talk about this?
Yeah, put in a quick plug for it. So
Yeah. So in 2000, I wrote this book, a fictional book. It's called The Bigfoot Mystery. It's one of a trilogy. There's three books to it. It's through our universe. It's 250 pages, and I did the artwork for it. It's the first book I ever got published, but not the first one I wrote. And so I rewrote it because Stephen says, yeah, you should rewrite it. It'd be kind of cool. So I did it through Amazon. So now it's like 444 pages. And my daughter helped me to redo the cover. So this is going to be out. This is the test copy. And I thought I had it down for editing, but there's much more editing I did. So I'm all done with that. So that was going to be finished here pretty quick. And I asked Kip Morrow to do the forward for the book. And so I'm looking forward to what he has to say. And then I'll add that to the book, and that one will be out really soon.
Awesome. I can't wait for it. So the book is what's it called, Robert?
It's going to be called the Bigfoot Trilogy, the Bigfoot Mystery. It's a silver anniversary edition. It's commemorating 25 years since I wrote this book. So when I rewrote it, I kept the same everything. I said made the grammar better and added more, better sentence structure or whatever. And evidently I had a lot more to say, but I try to keep it to the theme of what it was 25 years ago, the type of research done. And it's Crichton. The idea is to
Crichton
teach people about a
style,
subject
yep.
matter through dialogue. And it was fun.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So everybody, we will update everybody on the Bluff Creek Project Facebook page when that comes out, and everywhere on the YouTube channel here and all that. So be on the lookout for that book, The Bigfoot Mystery, and that'll be exciting. But in closing, Robert, have a wonderful night, and I can't wait to do this again. And for everybody watching at home, until next time, this is
All right, thank you.
Native Giants Podcast.
His canyon walls carry my tomb, the only one to hear my song. All the coyotes and the wolves, but if I dream